Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday episode this week with Stefania Marinelli. Hi Stefania, welcome back.
Hi Vasco, hi all.
So Stefania, on Wednesdays, we want to dive into one of those stories of change that you have gone through. As Scrum Masters, we are very often asked to be part of or even to lead change processes, whether it's in, a team or an organization. And sometimes, of course, we work also with changes at the team level, at the individual level. So tell us that story, Stefania, and walk us through the steps you took during that change process, and with a special emphasis on the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
So I think that since Scrum is a framework, you can adjust the framework and understand how you can use it to solve your problem. So if you are using Scrum, you are constantly in this change process. So I don't have a big story for a company change to share with you. It's more a teeny one. But I really like it because it was one of the moments where we really stopped and fixed a problem. So I was working with a new format team. We started working in Scrum. We started creating our board, physical board at the time, creating the board with the workflow of the team. There was a backlog, product owner. We are doing planning meetings, commitment, and so on. But what happened was that during the sprint, the team had to stop working on the story that committed to work on a problem in highest priority. And this has happened for the first sprint. And during the retrospective, we say, okay, could happen, let's wait. And then happen also during the second sprint. And so during the retrospective at the end of the second sprint, we stopped and we worked on our board. So we created a special board. I think that it wasn't a Scrum, a Kanban, or a Scrumban, whatever board. It's our board. So in this board, there were on the top an expedite lane that we called P0, where P is priority. The lane was empty and ready to for any priority, high priority that came up during the sprint. Then after this lane, there was the sprint goal. So not only one or two stories, but all the stories that are related to the sprint goal. After this lane, there were another expedite lane called P1. So all the priority, all the problem that the team could face during the sprint, but not so important to take the space for the sprint goal. The problem that the team faced during this period was that at the end of the sprint, yes, maybe they closed the priority 0, but they didn't close any story of the sprint. So restructuring the board, creating this lane and create a safe space for the sprint goal helped the team to at least work on the sprint goal and be able to manage the priority during the sprint and the sprint goal itself.
So it sounds to me that as you went through this process, there were a couple of things that happened. First, you had kind of the trigger, right? Like something, an urgent thing came up again, right? And
Yes.
then the team had that motivation. And then the other thing is you had the tool, kind of a vision of a solution. Let's create a board together. But how did you go from the problem to the board? Like, how did the team came to the conclusion that actually the board might be a good solution and then develop that?
So maybe because we were still working on the board, we were working on the workflow of the team because the team was formed. I didn't remember, maybe 1 month before. So we were working actively, understanding if the different statuses were the right one, if the board is helping us visualizing the possible queue or the status of the work. So I remember that we were using the board still in the retrospective. And also remember where we came up with this idea. We were working actually around the board. And this was the first experiment. And we obviously, as all the experiment, we iterate. So at the end of the third sprint, we understand if the experiment was good for us, created other status. So we were still in this phase to visualize our flow. That helped.
It's a very interesting point, because actually what that leads us to is that whatever is around us is likely to trigger a thought of a solution, right? You said you were still working on the board, and when you had that retrospective, the board was actually physically next to the team, so they could actually refer to it. Probably they did refer to it, and somebody said, "What if?" And then the whole change process started, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Then another aspect that was interesting in this story, and I think quite relevant for Scrum Masters, is that uh, the team came up with the ideas to try out. Right? Is that how you remember it?
So I didn't remember if was one of the team or more a collective decision. I cannot say it was mine or from one of the team. What I remember very well is what it was, that was a agreed decision. So no one could say, no, it's not, I'm not in, I didn't agree. Because the way we did it was very fast, and also we were ready to fail in this case. So what could happen worse than the last sprint that we didn't achieve the sprint goal? So let's do this. And I didn't mention that, but the product owner obviously was involved. Because this priority that came up during the sprint were related to technical problem. So obviously at the end, it was a problem for the product owner not having anything at the end of the sprint, was a problem for the team not having anything done. So all the things were work in progress still. So at the end, we came up with this saying, okay, let's try. If it doesn't work, we can think about another thing later. But for now, let's try it.
Yeah, and I think that's perhaps the last step in this process that I wanted to highlight, which is that once the team has a shared understanding of what the problem is, a solution will emerge, whatever that solution is, and if we can just try it out, we will, even if the solution doesn't work, we will learn and improve it. And it sounds to me, as you were describing the board, that you actually went through a few iterations of that board, correct?
Yes, correct. Exactly.
So I think that's a great way to kind of structure a change process, right? Like first understand the problem or get the team to come to a shared understanding of the problem, and then look at what surrounds us for visual cues, if it's a board, for example, or who did we talk to last that either triggered or helped us find what the problem was. And from then on, discuss a solution together and, as you said, give it a try.
Yes, exactly. And I think that the last bit, so give it a try, maybe it's the most difficult if you don't have an understanding, an agreement, and maybe you can try, but then the solution, I don't think that could help the team. So it's really important to try something that has been agreed by the team. I don't know if you have the same experience, Vasco.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say even one step further, that it is even better if the team can come up with whatever solution they want to try.
Yeah, exactly. That could be really, really the best.
Thank you very much for sharing that story, Stefania.
Thank you, Vasco.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role, we'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.